And I lost my friends. They are all, again, I'm going to come back to cerebral genocide. My attorney, Kevin Byers, Siobhan Reynolds, they died. I'm lucky to be alive. They died.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mantic. Excellent presentation, really very thought-provoking. It also reminds me of a meeting that Belinda and I had with the FBI years ago. When we were after we sent the coroner to prison, we wanted to meet with him to figure out what else we could do for corruption. And one of the agents looks at me and goes, "We're not interested in conspiracy theories." And I looked at him, I told him, I said, "Let me tell you something. We're going to document your conspiracy," which goes right back to what Eric had said. This is actual proof, and it needs to get out there. And we turned over 25,000 pages of documents to the FBI in our quest, for justice, of which I'm generally voting Republican. Of the 29 people we sent to prison, 27 of them are Republicans. So it really has nothing to do with what's behind your name. It's about doing the right thing. And I'm seeing a lot of that here, and I really appreciate the work that y'all are doing. Our next speaker is Dr. Jim Fitzer.
Well, we want to give you a hand for that, Terry.
Our next speaker is Dr. Jim Fetzer. Dr. Fetzer is a philosopher scientist, former Devil Dog officer in the Marine Corps. He's published widely on the theoretical foundations of scientific knowledge, computer science, artificial intelligence, and evolution. He was a McKnight Professor Emeritus at the University of Minnesota Duluth, and he wrote the single exclusively scientific book on the JFK assassination science. So with that, Dr. Fetzer, I'll turn the mic over to you. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much. David and I began collaborating in 1992. He was the most important contributor to my first two collections of expert studies, Assassination Science 1998 and Murder in Dealey Plaza 2000, for which he suggested the name. He was also the inspiration for the third, The Great Zapruder Film Hoax, published in 2003, where Vincent Bugliosi, in his 1,500-page tomb attempting to resurrect the Warren Report, entitled Reclaiming History, said mine were the only exclusively scientific books ever published on the assassination. Unfortunately, he paid no attention to the content. David is the leading expert on the medical evidence in the world, and because it requires a certain degree of technical competence to follow his work in detail, I'm going to provide a simpler version of the science and expand upon the politics of the death of JFK. So we can begin with the first slide. We all know, of course, that the official account has Lee Oswald firing 3 shots from the 6th floor and being the lone gunman killing the president. All of that is mythical. There was no lone gunman. Lee Oswald didn't fire any shots, and there were many more than 6, none of which were fired from the 6th floor. Here we had Oliver Stone positing 3 shooting teams, which was a step in the right direction. Turns out that Malcolm Kilduff, acting press secretary, when he announced the death of the president, said it was a simple matter of a bullet right through the head. Well, if it was a simple matter of a bullet right through the head, how can there have been only 3 shots from behind? And indeed, if you went Jack in the back of the head, killing him. Now, if you took those shot to the throat, the shot to the right temple, the shot to the back, and the shot to the throat, you got 4 of 5 hits on JFK. But they were all fired from different directions by different shooters. So if you just look at the number of shots fired, just the hits on JFK, you've already got 4, and then you got the shot to Connolly, that's 5. I seem to recall that 5 is a number larger than 1. So you begin to appreciate the enormity. And the fact is that the public was being informed at the time of 2 shots, both of which had been fired from in front. So that when the story starts to dribble in about 3 shots fired from above and beyond that the Secret Service and the FBI agree upon, Frank McGee, who is nobody's fool, says, well, it's pretty fascinating because he was actually captured in the most famous photograph taken in Dealey Plaza by EP photographer James Ike Alchin, where you see the limousine in the foreground. If you look where JFK's left ear would be, if his left ear were visible, you can see a small white spiral nebula with a dark hole in the center where the bullet that hit him in the throat passed through the windshield en route to its target. In the back area, and we'll proceed to look at it more closely, there's a figure hanging out who many have thought bore a striking resemblance to the alleged assassin. You look further in the background, and there's an open window to a broom closet of a uranium mining company that turns out to be a CIA asset in the Dow Tex that's bracketed by the fire escape from which 3 shots were fired. The only unsilenced shots fired by a Mannlicher Carcano. Yeah, okay. Those who knew Lyndon the best became convinced that he had been involved in the assassination. None knew him better than Madeline Duncan Brown, with whom he began an affair in 1948. She bore him a son, Stephen, in 1950. Because of their relationship, she was frequently invited to social events. And in this case, the evening before the assassination, she was invited to the home of Clint Murkison Sr., one of the most wealthy Texas oil men, for a special event she thought was in honor of J. Edgar Hoover, who would typically stop in Dallas on his way to California to the racetrack, where when he put down a bet, his horse invariably won. Turns out the track was owned by Clint Murkison Sr., so it was no coincidence. But also present, drawing the same conclusion, included Billy Saul Estes. Billy Saul had conversations with Cliff Carter, who was Lyndon's chief administrative aide, and Mac Wallace, who was Lyndon's personal hitman. Mac killed 12 people for Lyndon, including one of his own sisters. And Billy said he got this sense from talking with them that they had been involved. We had Barr McClellan, who was working for this Ed Clark, a powerful attorney where a lot of the planning for the assassination took place, and I dare say of the cover-up and legal aspects. Moreover, Roger Stone has published a book against a man who killed Kennedy, the case against LBJ. There are others I'll mention. E. Howard Hunt, on the verge of his death, he thought he was dying, told his son, St. John, that the chain of command had gone from Lyndon Johnson to Cord Meyer to David Lee Phillips to William Harvey to David Sanchez Morales. And that appears to be correct. Now, Hunt said he was there in Dallas at the time, but he was on the back bench. He did not participate in the shooting, and he was not the third of the tramps, so often mistakenly thought to be. When you put the pieces together, you get further conclusions done about exactly how this all played out. We not only have, here we have George Herbert Walker Bush, who was in front of the book depository. This photograph occurred in Jesse Curry's JFK assassination files, a paperback only put out by 7-Eleven stores, where he went to work after he retired as chief of police in Dallas. And I may have been the first to recognize that was George H.W. Bush. On the corner of Houston in Maine, there was a group of CIA officials who were there to pay their last respects. I mean, What more powerful indication could we have of CIA complicity? Here are the three tramps. They were, in fact, Charles Rogers, also known as Richard Montoya, Charles Harrelson, the father of Woody Harrelson, and the third, Chauncey Marvin Holt, who I actually met and discussed. Here you have now, when you go through the medical evidence for which David has made such monumental contributions, you have to ask yourself, considering that it included altering x-rays under control of medical officers of the U.S. Navy and the Secret Service, could the mafia have extended its reach into Bethesda to alter those x-rays? Or, since it was a substitution of another brain for the brain of JFK, could anti-Castro Cubans have made a substitution of another brain? Or when it comes to the alteration of the film, in the Zapruder film, it turns out it's been massively edited. They know he blacked out the blowout at the back of the head, but they took out a limo stop, and here Larry Rivera has done extraordinarily important book, and his may have felt they were double-crossed by Bobby as Attorney General, bringing so many suits and indictments. Edgar himself, just as he had sex dossiers on Congress, the mafia had a sex dossier on Edgar that inhibited him from even talking about the existence of organized crime until post the Valachi hearings, when it was no longer politically possible to deny. And of course, the Eastern establishment surrounding the Fed, Jack had instructed the Department of the Treasury to print United States notes in the belief that it was absurd for the government to pay interest to a private consortium of banks to publish the currency of the United States when the United States could do it by the Department of Treasury for free. Israel, he was at loggerheads with David Ben-Gurion, who wanted Israel to develop nuclear weapons. Jack feared it was going to set off a nuclear arms race, so he was opposed to that. Each of these individuals and groups had their own shooter in Dallas that day. And George Herbert Walker Bush and Edward Lansdale appear to have been the coordinators, where Lansdale, the life that among his dalliances was one with a beautiful woman who turned out to be a spy for East Germany. And moreover, that if he were not on the ticket, then any legislative proposal sent down by the White House would be dead on arrival, because in his position as a powerful majority leader, he'd bottle them up. Jack and Bobby tried to figure a way out, but Lyndon had them boxed in, and they had to accede to his demand. One of Lyndon's wealthy backers, learning this was happening, burst into the Johnson suite cursing and swearing, because now LBJ was going to help JFK become president of the United States. Bobby Baker took him into a bedroom and explained what they had in mind. He came out all smiles, saying he thought that was an excellent plan. Bobby Baker would subsequently declare that JFK would not live out his first term and would die a violent death. And Lyndon Johnson would send Cliff Carter, his chief administrative aide, down to Dallas to make sure all the arrangements were in place for the assassination. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very enlightening discussion. At this point, we'd like to take a few questions.
Hey, my name is Aquanetta Barnes. Now, I'm fighting for a lot of patents and ideas, so I know what you say about they kill leaders that was doing purging off. Well, I am she, that is real daddy and her. They got Tushy, Whitey. They no longer our she, nor have I ever been recognized. A lot of ideas are put into motion, warning signals, the way to put out fires and all that. But my curious thing is a lot, what you say is a lot to take in. Now, when Kennedy passed, I'm 72 years old. When Kennedy passed here, because he passed here, and he went down St. Charles Street, he was in a limousine motorcade. You couldn't even see them. They were going so fast. I'm like, everybody said, here comes Kennedy. Well, who is it? I just seen red hair. I didn't see nothing. But they say Leo Harvey Oswald and the Marcellus, too, the crime boss, they thought he was going to, I guess, get shot here. I didn't understand why he went to Dallas, and then they had to top drop. You know what I mean? The top drop, and why more than him didn't get shot. Now, one lady say they had somebody in the bushes that they believe more than Leah Harvey Oswald. They had someone in the bushes that they think shot too, but they never interviewed her no more. So my curiosity, why they had the top down when he came here to New Orleans, they flew down here, and he was in limousine, motorcade. So how he get to Dallas, Texas, and that's the conspiracy that worked. But they said Lyndon B. Johnson was sweet on Jackie Kennedy, but was mad also with him because the way he was treating Jackie. They think he had something to do with it. You had all these different theories about why he may have gotten shot. But that's a lot to take it. Have you ever considered why, when he was in New Orleans, he was in a limousine motorcade, but he gets to Dallas, and they give him a top-down, what it was, Corvette. So all that conspiracy was to do it in Dallas because they thought Lee Harvey Oswald or Marcellus was going to do it here in New Orleans.
Well, to the extent that I understood the question, Lee appears to have been recruited by the Office of Naval Intelligence when he was undergoing recruit training in San Diego. I myself served as a series commander with 15 DIs and 300 recruits under my command. They called him Oswaldovich because of his interest in Russian. He was not a very good shot. He was mediocre, and in 1 year when he ought to have been qualifying with a rifle, he did not, which meant he had to be on a special assignment, I suspect, studying Russian in Monterey. He was subsequently stationed at Atsugi, which is our most secure base worldwide. Anyone thought to be a traitor to the United States would most certainly not have been there. Whereas a radar operator, he knew the altitude at which the U-2 overflights were spying on the Soviet Union. Tablet. He did, of course, as was mentioned in passing, marry the niece of a KGB colonel, Fatchin Marina, back to the United States. They were not treated as traitors. He was giving money to relocate. She went to Dallas to live with Ruth Payne, who, with her husband, were CIA assets. Lee went to New Orleans here to be sheep-dipped as a pro-communist, Castro sympathizer. We had an event on the street where there was a rowdy crowd and there was a TV camera just happened to be there. There are lots and lots of details here, some rather fascinating stuff, including his romance with Judith Very Baker, and they're working on a fast-acting cancer that was supposed to be used against Fidel. This is in coordination with David Ferry, Lee Oswald, Judith Very, and under Dr. Mary Sherman, which appears to have been actually used to take out Jack Ruby. Then Lee goes to Dallas and gets a position in the book depository just weeks before. They changed the motorcade route. Theories, we're talking about conspiracy facts. In fact, indeed, conspiracy is the most widely prosecuted crime in the United States. So that conspiracy turned out to be as American as apple pie. Other questions?
Yes. If I understood you correctly, you said that Matt Wallace shot shot Connolly.
Yeah.
And that LBJ wanted Connolly shot?
No. He didn't want Connolly shot.
Did not.
Did you not hear where I said he had a big argument with JFK that morning?
Right.
Because he wanted Connolly out in Yarborough Inn, and Jack overrode him on the ground that the chief of the state should ride with the chief of the United States.
Okay.
Yeah. No, he didn't want him in, but it turned out to have political benefits because no one would have ever thought he would put Connolly at risk.
Okay, well, that's why I was asking, because it
Yeah, and
didn't make
therefore
sense to
they
me.
intended to exonerate Lyndon when he was the bad guy. I think there may have been an image here, too, from Noel Twyman's completely sensational book, Bloody Treason, where he explained that the ideal conspiracy, and this was already published in 1997, would bring together the Secret Service with the CIA, Mafia with the Joint Chiefs, and Lyndon and Edgar. Well, Lyndon and Edgar already hated, and in fact, it was Lyndon who was the brains behind the assassination and in the position to bring them all together, but that didn't mean meeting jointly in the same place by representatives thereof, simply covertly working it all out. This was years in the making. Other questions? Yes.
By November of 1963, I imagine that the CIA was aware of 50,000 ways to kill a man that would have been cleaner than this. So why wouldn't they go with
Brian,
the
I couldn't quite hear you. Pull your mic down just a little. Say it again.
testing? By November of 1963,
Yes.
I imagine the CIA was aware of at least 10,000 ways to kill a man that would have been
Yeah.
cleaner
Yeah.
and left less evidence. So why select such a public approach?
Yeah, it's such a great question. They did it because if it had not been done in public in front of hundreds of witnesses, no one would have believed that it wasn't a conspiracy. So the whole idea was a rationale. They had to do it in public. It had to be a situation where they were in control or could manage the evidence. They anticipated stealing the body, altering the evidence as David is so magisterially exposed. They knew what they could do, and they had surveillance. All the civilians were under surveillance. Mary Mormon and Jean Hill, for example. Mary was taking Polaroids, giving them to Jean. She was coating them with a preservative. They were immediately apprehended after the assassination. They took the photographs away. They knew how many photographs she'd taken. They'd asked Jean, and they were interrogated separately, how many shots she had. And she said, well, at least maybe 4 or 5. And they said, no, that's not possible. There were only 3. This was in the immediate aftermath of the shooting because they knew they had to control the narrative. David, yes. Where's the mic? Yeah.
So, good points, Jim. So, yeah, the federal people picked up all the photographs. So, and I think you and I agree that the CIA knew this was going to be one of their biggest hits.
Yes.
So why didn't the CIA photograph this?
Why didn't the CIA?
Why didn't the CIA photograph this?
They did photograph it.
Where did they photograph it?
Well, there appeared to have been more than one camera. You got Zapruder standing up on the pedestal. I climbed up there myself. But his secretary seems to interfere. I mean, this is on the very cover of the book, The Great Zapruder Film Hoax. Jack White pointed out, and it looks as though she was obscuring Zapruder's view. Mind you, too, Zapruder said he began filming when the motorcade come up Houston before it turned on him. So we got that big gap in missing frames because Greer mistook the frontage road in front of the book depository for Elm Street, swung out too widely, nearly hit a concrete abutment. Roy Truly explained he nearly hit this thing and had to pause and then get back in line. Now, when we see the car disappearing, right, at the bottom, that's very, very odd. If this was with a handheld camera, that would not occur because you'd keep the limousine in focus in the center of your view, but it's consistent with a camera on a tripod, but the other 2% gives it away. For example, the Stemmons freeway sign had a bullet hole in it, and that was too many. In fact, when they discovered one of the shots had missed and injured the distant bystander, James Tague, that's when they had to account for all the wounds with only 2 bullets, which they did by changing the description of the back wound to the base of the back of the neck, claiming it transited the neck without hitting any bony structures and exited the throat. So now the throat entrance wound now becomes an exit wound. The separate back wound now turns out to be a base of the back of the neck, claiming it went into Connolly, shattered a rib, came out, hit his right wrist, and wound up in his left thigh. Now, there were, by my count, 10 to 12 shots fired, depending on how many were actually fired at Connolly, and the mistaken belief it was Ralph Yarborough. At the very least, we have the chest shot, but it's possible Mac Wallace fired additional shots, at least one that hit the wrist and wound up in the thigh. But they did photograph it. I have 6 parties, including mutual associates of ours, David, who actually have seen the film. Rich De La Rosa explained he had seen it 3 different times. And I even included a Della Rosa report as one of the appendices of the great Zapruder film hoax. Monk, Greg Burnham, claims to have seen it 3 different times. William Raymond claims to have seen it. And 3 others. I know 6 people who saw what they call the other film, but which appears to be the unedited film, which include the limousine stop and all that. And it was very abrupt. Everyone was jostled forward. And as I say, Jack had very limited the Kennedy limousine. One took a chunk of skull and threw it back in the car, which I believe would be the Harper fragment that they later brought back and put it at a different location to obfuscate where the shooting had actually taken place. But get this, one of the agents actually climbed into the limousine, an agent by the name of Glenn Bennett. And notice that's not the same name as Clint Hill. We're not talking about Clint, who claimed he rushed up, to protect Jackie. I believe Clint was actually hanging on the back of the limo all the way to Parkland, and they had to alter various films in order to obscure that fact, and that Glenn Bennett was inside. There's actually, interesting, there's a second limo stop at the entry to the Stemmons Freeway, so they wanted to verify that Jack was actually dead, D-E-A-D, and of course, he was. But there was so much going on in terms of photographic alteration, chicanery. It's really astounding. This was very thoroughly mapped out. And by the way, I don't believe for a minute that Alan Dodger.
Where exactly was the CIA photographer? We know it was not Zapruder. Where was the CIA photographer?
No, I said, Dave, it was a camera on a tripod in the pergola. And that's why the limousine disappears, because the pergola is not following the limousine. And you got the camera disappearing, which would never have happened if it were a handheld cameraman holding it, because he would have focused on the limo.
But Jim, the federal agencies collected all the films from that day, and they identified all the photographers.
For 2 weeks after the assassination, they had agents stationed at all the photo labs around Dallas.
They were all
and
collected.
They take any photograph or film. This is in Pictures of the Pain, Richard Task. He's even got a photograph of the card they left saying, "We have taken your photograph as evidence." And, most of it was never returned. But, I mean, they did quite a job of vacuuming up evidence, David.
Yeah, but they forgot to pick up the CIA photographer film. Why is that?
What do you mean, the CIA? What film do you mean, David?
You just said that the CIA photographer was there in the pergola on a tripod.
No, I said there was a camera on a tripod.
Why didn't they pick up that film?
That was used to film it.
Why didn't they pick up that film?
They took the footage to the Kodak lab right there in Dallas.
No, you're confusing 2 things, Jim. You're confusing Zapruder with the CIA photographer. Please stop doing that.
Oh, okay. You want me to distinguish Zapruder from what you're calling the CIA, which I'm suggesting
I'm only
was
focused
actually
on the CIA
a camera on a
photographer.
tripod.
Forget Zapruder. We know that
Give
story.
me your answer, David. My goodness. I mean, I'm recognizing your role here in all of this research, which has been
So where is the CIA photographer
important.
in all the photographs that were taken that day?
Well, there were lots of photographs. I mean, we got scads of them,
You're
And
not
we
answering
have
my question. And the
another
reason
home
is,
movie taken by Nix.
may I
from
tell
the
you why you
opposite
cannot
side.
answer my question?
David,
Yeah,
I'm
go
not-
right ahead,
Tell me
David.
your answer to your question so I get a better sense of what you think you're talking about.
Yeah, because we have one more question and then we're going to wrap it up. Go ahead.
I'll answer
David,
in
please
3
tell me.
words.
What do you think was happening here?
Read my next book.
Read your next book. Very good, very good. Alan.
I want to make a psychological point. CIA had all the means to silently kill JFK. They could have done it very easily. There is a mafia mentality of mental effing, doing it in such a bravado way to deliver a message to the world, and that was very obvious. They did it in a spectacular way, and they documented it. Lucien Conin, Vietnam station chief, was photographed with JFK at Daley Plaza. Not only that, that photograph, AP photograph, was circulated around the world as a message to everybody. You know who did it. We did it. We're very proud. We want the world to know who's the boss. That's the psychological message.
Alan,
They could have done it very easily.
Alan, they could have killed Jack in the White House in the dead of night, but no one would have believed it wasn't a conspiracy. They had to do it in public with hundreds of spectators so the world could see for itself. It wasn't a conspiracy because they could edit the evidence, they could manufacture the outcome, they could frame Oswald, all of which they did in many of the ways David has made so brilliantly clear through painstaking research. I don't think anyone else in the world could have done it but that man.
We have
It's
one
true.
more question.
Okay.
Jack Ruby was from here in New Orleans too, but I think Jack Ruby killed Oswald to keep him from speaking. Then they said they killed John F. Kennedy because he was doing too much for the blacks. But also, I do a lot of problem solving. They talk about this, that, and that, and you said his motorcade was first with the top down. It should have been in the middle. Well, the conspiracy shouldn't you go to the person who arranged the motorcade setup and who authorized the top to be down? I think they killed a driver. They had to kill a driver to keep him from moving the car so they could continue on shooting that Kennedy. But as kicks, they must have went around Jackie Kennedy because the driver was in front of Jackie Kennedy, was it?
No.
The driver was
No, it's very easy to tell. I mean, it's a popular belief, just as we have the idea Jackie shot Jack, and just as we have the idea Secret Service agent accidentally shot him in the back of the head,
Yeah.
which, by the way, would only account for one. I mean, the man was hit 5 times.
But she would have got shot.
There was no wound that Jackie could have inflicted. She loved Jack Kennedy.
No,
She
no,
held him in her-
I'm saying.
She held him in her arms all the way.
No, I'm saying.
As far as Greer is concerned, looking at the limousine from the back, Greer's at the left front, Jack is at the right rear. If Greer shot Jack, his brains go out to the right rear. Instead, they went out to the left. So Greer didn't shoot Jack either, though William Cooper, who was a pretty smart guy and understood a lot, got that one wrong.
But who was the driver?
William Greer.
Yeah, but he was shot, wasn't he?
No.
He wasn't shot?
The claim was that Greer shot Jack. He's supposed to have turned around with a silver-plated .45 and shot Jack.
But why y'all don't go to the person who set up this arrangement for the motorcade? They have never talked about where the motorcade procession, if you say he should have been in the middle, but he was in the front, no one never went to that person and find out why did you arrange that motorcade that way?
Look.
Huh?
I did a show with John B. Wells. I mean, this
Which
must
is
have been,
abnormal.
listen to me, 10 years ago. He asked me one question about JFK, and I spoke for 3.5 hours to answer his question, okay? 3.5 hours. John B. liked that so much he put it out in public, but he makes money, you know, from subscriptions. As far as we know, the head of the Secret Service detail was involved in it, and he was a guy who would have had responsibility there. We know the head of the Secret Service back in the White House was involved, but the key player behind the entire assassination was Lyndon Baines Johnson.
And that's what they say. That's what they say too. But I'm trying to say the motorcade setup. I know what you're saying, but the setup of the motorcade, I'm trying to pinpoint something. Because although the conspiracy is there, I do believe a lot of conspiracy, and I believe the CIA is capable, but a lot of other people, like you say. But the motorcade setup, what individual or what person was responsible for the motorcade setup? Because if he was in the front car, and that's abnormal. Normally you say he should be in the middle. Why was he placed in that front car with the thing down?
Look, it was to make it easier for the shooters so they wouldn't get confused. This was a very peculiar motorcade. Normally, a presidential motorcade is all uniformly black Cadillac limousines. This was vehicles of many different makes and models and different colors. That's so the conspirators would know where everyone was in the motorcade. But to make it simpler for the assassins, they put Jack right out front. Anyone with familiarity with presidential motorcades knows that's wrong. They even sent Fletcher Prouty, who would never have gone along with this, off to the South Pole on a ceremonial occasion where he was in Christchurch, New Zealand, when they already had a report with a portrait quality photograph of Oswald as the lone assassin, just as we got Jerry explaining how McGeorge Bundy had notified the cabinet that had been sent off to the Pacific to get him out of the way, that it was Oswald.
Very well. Y'all give him a hand. You know, I want to say this, is that it's so important, before Mr. King speak, that we have people like all of these brilliant speakers here today. It's all about the cover-up. He made it so clear in his speech about cover-up. And we're going to say some more to that. Y'all just hold tight. Go ahead, Terry. Introduce our next. You know what's coming next?
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fetzer. I really appreciate that. To be honest with you, I'm starting to get the impression that there was a lot of people that didn't like John Kennedy. This all happened before I was born. Thank you for that. We're now going to move to our next speaker, which is a video that appeared on Netflix with Ralph Sink. Ralph Sink founded the Oswald Innocence campaign with Jim Fetzer and Larry Rivera, and proved that Lee Harvey Oswald was in the doorway of the Texas School Depository, which we saw a photo of that earlier, as the motorcade passed. He also directed and produced Dovey's Promise, which is a movie about the organized silencing of Mary Pinochet, JFK's mistress.
Is John F. Kennedy and Mary Pinchot Meyer.
So Mary knew JFK?
Oh, she more than knew him. She was his friend, lover, and closest confidant in this world.
Did you murder Miss Meyer?
So who could it have been? Look, either it was organized crime or some dark cell within the government, and probably the CIA.
This case is a travesty. And if Mr. Hampman finds it compelling, he should be disbarred.
Objection, Your Honor.
There isn't going to be an appeal because I'm not going to lose. And that's a promise.
All right, we'll see. Step back. Defense counsel, you may make your closing statement to the jury.
Go ahead, Terry. Yes. We wanted. Yes, Dr. Pfister, here. I have the mic. We just want you to just have a few comments about the films. We're waiting on our students and their name.
Yeah. Well, that short guy was Ralph Sinkay. Now, Jack did have dalliances with a lot of women, including Marilyn, but he doesn't appear to have been a great lover. Angie Dickinson said her affair with JFK was the greatest 15 seconds of her life. And he did these things. If you want to read a wonderful book about Hollywood, Marilyn and Jack, it's called Marilyn at Rainbow's End by Darwin Porter. Absolutely brilliant. I think he explains exactly how Marilyn was taken out. But in the process, you learn a lot of fascinating things about Brando, James Dean, a whole lot of, and Jack and Bobby. Now, this thing with Mary Pinchot Myers, she was married to Cord Meyer, who was a second in the chain of command, going from, according to E. Howard Hunt, from Lyndon to Cord Meyer. Well, this is Cord Meyer's ex-wife. Jack had a very profound. Sinkay, I'm sorry he couldn't be here, is a fascinating guy, and I don't want to underestimate him. We've had our differences, but he has so much to contribute. He's been very provocative, and I admire the guy in spite of our differences. Anyway, that's a background. This is about the Mary Pinchenmeyer trial because they tried to blame it on a black man who was totally innocent in order to conceal it. I mean, that's the CIA style.
Thank you very much.
We're running out of time. Thank you. Go ahead, Terry. We'll get you, David. Can you make it real brief? Because we got to get the students up here. Okay.
I usually keep my comments very specific and to the point. I don't see any point to haranguing. Peter Janney wrote the definitive book called Mary's Mosaic about this whole case. Peter is one of my friends. He accompanied me to the sixth floor museum, so I trust Peter. Peter knew Mary Myers' family well. Her son was his best friend for years. So Peter was devastated about Mary's death. He was very close to her. Peter's father worked for the CIA. Oh, too many coincidences. Yes, Peter's father, Wistar Janney, worked for the CIA. The day of Mary's death, Wistar Janney knew that Mary had been killed by mid-afternoon. Now think about this. The victim was not officially identified until later that day. How could he know in mid-afternoon that Mary was dead when her body wasn't even...
Belinda, Elizabeth for inviting me to this event. Belinda had called me during Christmas break and said, we're having this World Honesty Conference on January the 4th. And I said, that's next week. And I said, can you get your students there? I said, no, they're on Christmas break, and you're not going to even get me there on January the 4th. And so I do appreciate them kind of reevaluating and the date to allow us to come. And also, even before this event, getting to know Dr. Salorian the last couple of weeks has been an honor. And certainly this event, when you're talking about, and I'm not an expert in JFK or Martin Luther King assassination, so we've learned quite a bit today or this afternoon, and hope to learn more. And government controversy and government cover-up is nothing new. We know it's out there and it exists every day. Most of it we never learn about, and then we hear experts like amongst yourselves that really kind of share, the actual truth. It's a very, very difficult thing to do. And to be able to lose language and culture has been very difficult for my children. And so, as we started the center, and I told the board trustees, certainly I'm not African American, but certainly as Arab American, we all have dealt with our injustices personally and obviously worldwide, as we've seen with genocide, as Dr. Sarah has provided. We've seen 36,000 people, innocent people, lose their lives in the last year and a half. That really should not happen. Should not happen. And so, as a person of faith, and we talked earlier, someone mentioned the lack of family, lack of faith. I think this country has lost family. The breakup of the family has been a hot topic around this country. The loss of faith has been a hot topic around this country. I think we're kind of losing our way that we need to kind of come back to. We need to find and go back to the 10 Commandments, the values and simple things that we've just kind of completely lost. We're just doing what we want when we want, and I don't think that works anymore. We've got to come back to the basic morals, basic values. And so, as we have worked the last 4 years on issues of police brutality, poverty, I've worked with a lot of people on human trafficking. I mean, things that people don't even hear about on the news. It's just devastating what is going on. Missing children, 800,000 missing children go out every year, but do we hear about these kinds of things? No, we don't. And these are the things that we're trying to work, not only myself and my staff, but we involve the students in our community to engage in. We're fortunate to be able to get some funding. I'm very thankful and very fortunate. Sometimes I don't really recognize, we get angry and frustrated about the simplest of things, and it's just really, we recognize in the larger scheme of things, they're just inconsequential. And so I've been put in a position to impact social change. We've heard from many speakers today working on things impacting social change. And so we are thankful for that. And we look forward to working with Dr. Salorian in the future and things that he's doing and he believes in. Because when you talk about genocide and slavery and things of this nature, these are still prevalent problems. We think they're in the past, but no, they are currently still current problems that we need to work on. And so today, I'm very thankful to be here. My students were able to work on several of their projects. that they want to share. Give them a minute to kind of present some of the work that they're doing in terms of looking at these types of issues. So we're going to give them a minute to present. And again, I thank you all for allowing us to be here to present and to, again, learn more about the kinds of things that are going on that, again, are going to be very shocking. But again, the truth needs to be told, as they say. So thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Professor. Let's have the students come on up. Yeah, give them a hand. We love you, Professor Ishmael, and we love Dillard University and the great work that you're doing with our students. All of you students come on up to the stage, and we're going to line up, and we're going to go one by one. And I'm going to hold the mic for you. Come on down here to the end. Get everybody up here. Wow, you all look so great. Who wants to go first?
So hello everyone, my name is Olivia Wilson. I'm a senior criminal justice major at Dillard. And to talk very briefly, my project was about America, mass incarceration, and this new form of what they call modern day slavery. So firstly, I talked about past implications in the history of immediately following slavery, the earliest forms of our criminal justice system. So I discussed the Black Codes as well as Jim Crow era legislation. And the interesting things about the Black Codes and this type of legislation is that they directly targeted Black Americans and were basically systems of oppression for Black Americans. And so what's interesting is that in the present day, with the prison industrial complex, slavery is abolished except for as punishment as a crime. And so you have many people who are prisoners right now in essentially this new era of slavery. And our prison system disproportionately affects Black Americans as opposed to white Americans. Not passed to address these issues, then we will have a new era of slavery in full force. And so my suggestions were to vote, of course, it's important to vote, and elect leaders. Currently, the abolition amendment is in the works in some states in the United States, and that's looking to outlaw slavery in all forms, including as punishment for a crime. Yeah.
Thank you. Give her a hand.
Hello, everyone. My name is Raven Ducree. I am a junior criminal justice major, and my topic basically covers how historical slavery is linked with human trafficking. A fun fact, if human trafficking was a country, it would be the third in economy. Yeah, that's a fun fact. Another thing is that human slavery is basically a legacy when it comes to human trafficking. You know, at the beginning of slavery, people were treated like property. There was raped, killed, you know, free labor and everything. And it's kind of like this now with human trafficking. People are being used like property. They're being raped. They're being slaughtered and other bad things to them that are very detailed. So yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Viaja Johnson. I'm a junior attending Dillard University, criminal justice major and English minor. My presentation was on From Captivity to Freedom, the Journey of the Enslaved Peoples. We all know the basic history behind slavery, such as institutionalized slavery became prominent or started in America in 1619, and it continued through on out for centuries and even on now, like my other colleagues have said. However, I decided to capture the present details of it, such as Black Lives Matter that was established in 2013, that holds protests to raise awareness about social injustices and inequalities, and also like the ratification of June 19th becoming Juneteenth, and that's just, two important historical events that have happened for us African Americans to get some form of acknowledgement for the many things that we have been through. Even looking more to know, or we just need to continue to fight against the many barriers that we have set, because justice and equality is an ongoing fight, and it's just important to know that we must gather together to make sure our future generations know the American history and the truth behind it in order for all of us to be successful. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Shaylin Owens. I'm a criminal justice major, and my presentation is on the forensic fraud and the role of criminal investigation. So basically, everyone knows what forensic fraud is, right? So forensic fraud is when the forensic examiner, they falsify information to get unfair. That's when, to get an unfair judgment from the court. So basically, Fred Kane, it was a case. He was a forensic examiner who falsified kidnaps and rapes over 137 men who were entitled to a reopen just because he felt like they did it. Overall, I think we should, invest in AI forensic fraud examiner where they can just see, so you can stop the human errors and the falsification of DNA testing. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Willie Green Jr. I'm a criminal justice major from Houston, Texas. And I'm going to just read my conclusion. I did my presentation on the injustices in Palestine. The story of Palestine is one of resilience and struggle. While its past is marred by colonization and conflict, the present reflects ongoing efforts towards self-determination and peace. The future of Palestine is uncertain, but offers opportunities for resolution through diplomatic engagement, grassroots movement, the international solidarity. The path forward requires addressing historical grievances and building sustainable frameworks for coexistence.
Hi, everybody. My name's Jackson Shear. I'm a junior at Dillard and a criminal justice major. I did my project on a past, present, future of Germany. Obviously, Germany has a very dark past with the Holocaust and other things that happened there. And then moving to the present day, their age is growing, their average age in the country is growing since people don't want to move there with the dark past. People are moving away. What else did I say here? So I said they're trying to rectify their mistakes through things that they're doing present day. They're still paying out, on average, $535 million per year to the families of those who died in the Holocaust. And these are all steps that they're taking to rectify the past mistakes. And then the future of Germany is not bright, as their economic outlook is declining as the population age is rapidly increasing. So their average age right now is about 45. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Hi, so my presentation is over the heroin epidemic. And the beginning of the epidemic was in the 1990s, of course, when they started pushing drugs into our communities. And the future is kind of gotten away from heroin a little bit, but it's still an ongoing problem in our communities. And our present day, it doesn't look as bad as it used to, but it's still an issue. And hopefully we're able to address it and save more lives. Thank you.
Wow, let's give him another hand. It means a lot that we can have our young people do such a fantastic presentation such as this and dig up the history and also bring us the present, not just the past, but the present and the future. So let's give them another hand. Thank you all, Dillard University. Professor Ashmiel, why don't you come? Is there anything else that you would like to say about your phenomenal students? You know, I think this is, this is the conclusion of our conference. We're gonna finalize this conference with Dr. Solarian. Are you gonna do your PowerPoint presentation? His final.
Eisenhower, Truman wanted. Presidents wanted the same thing. And this is a journey that we have begun. In 1 month, we have a dream conference as a follow-up for this, where 1,000 churches around the world are going to ring their bells, and we're going to sing Ode to Joy, the principle, the mission of justice, fairness, openness, and equality. This conference is all about, supported by science and the scientific presentations that we have heard. So I thank everybody, in particular our American treasures. You guys are amazing.
Thank you, Dr. Solarian. We love you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, Terry, why don't you give us the final words and close it out?
All of this has kind of reminded me of one of my experiences. I'm a Rotarian. Every Friday at lunch, we all get together and we say the four-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? If we all live by that, the truth will come through in everything that we do. The students are in the next room. They've prepared a whole bunch of different posters for their research that they've worked on, and we're inviting everyone to go over there and enjoy that and network with some of them as well. But thank you very much for inviting me to participate, and Belinda.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your day. Get ready for our cocktail later on tonight. We're going to be having Oliver Thomas, our councilman, councilman for the city of New Orleans is going to be our speaker. So that's tonight at the cocktail at 6 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. This is a fantastic conference on our silent heroes, and also the people who helped us discover the silent heroes. We have the good fortune of having them in this room with us. These are special names that we should recognize. David Mantik, Jerry Corsi, Jim Fetzer, Ralph Sink. These are the people who made it possible for JFK and MLK records to be accessible to the public, for all of us to read. They're our records. We are all MLK, JFK, Hrant Dink, and so on. That's the spirit of our conference, and most importantly, the World Honesty Day that we're planning to celebrate on March 16, 2025. I let my painting speak, starting with JFK. The guy was a Oswald to happen to my grandchildren and to your grandchildren. I want my grandchildren to live in a different world where we can.
I want to thank Dr. Alan Solari.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. We would just want to thank you so very, very much from the bottom of our hearts for taking the time out of your business.
Out in the lobby, the orange books, has my name on the front cover of it. I have one for everyone in here. Please feel free to take one. It's a story about how Belinda and I first met, but I develop alternative housing strategies for corrupt government officials, and I put together a guidebook on how other people can send corrupt politicians to jail as well, as Belinda and I did.
Yes.
So I hope y'all enjoy it and hope you get good information out of it.
And it has already been autographed, and he is also, the new book? A second book is coming out here shortly, and we will make sure that everyone have the opportunity to receive that book too as well. Terry King has led the Criminal Justice Task Force team for Louisiana United International for what, about 10 years now, over 10 years. And we have done some phenomenal work, and we would just love for you all to read that book and really I just want to let you all know that you're going to be captivated by Dr. Solarian and the passion, the intense passion that he have for the great work that he do. Come on, Dr. Solarian.
Thank you, my dear. Thank you, everybody, for being here and coming. This conference is really a credit to some very special people. All I consider human and American treasures, and they are next to us. It's Professor Fetzer, Jim Fetzer, David Mantik, Jerry Corsi, and later Ralph Sink. They are the ones who scientifically exposed. It's a $6 million question. Yes, of course. He was involved, and he was one of the architects, main architects of JFK assassination. It's a great question.
Any more questions?
Regarding Allen Dulles, in 1963, in the summer, Allen paid a visit to the LBJ Ranch. Now, why would he do that? He was no longer in office. Remember, he had been fired by JFK because of the Bay of Pigs. Why is Allen Dulles visiting the LBJ Ranch in the summer of 1963, not too long before JFK was shot?
It's a brilliant question and observation for the same reason that Alan Dulles was spending the night on November 22nd, 1963, at the CIA, at a secret house, but CIA house. And why did...
With Putin, how about letting us know how a man from New Orleans could go to the Marines and go to Russia, come back with a Russian wife, and everything was okay? Maybe the Russians have some things to tell us about. What's your comments on that?
I think it's a beautiful observation, but there's one word about Lee Harvey Oswald, a brilliant man, very smart man. At the age of 17, do you know anybody from Louisiana who would speak fluent Russian so well that his future wife, Marina, thought he was Russian-born? Wow. Okay, well, do you know anybody in Louisiana who speaks Russian? All right? And I was 17. My boy, Lee Harvey Oswald, was speaking fluent Russian. That's it. So
okay,
we have doubts. But no, forget about doubts and circumstantial evidence. Let's get serious. Please listen to my heroes here. I can't get the question. What is the question?
Did the Dulles brothers, Allen and his brother, who was the CIA and the Secretary of State, set up a monetary system that enriched themselves in South America by setting up almost a caste system, kind of like the ancient Peninsulars of Spain. And it's almost still in existence till today.
Wow.
It is absolutely true what you're saying. And again, I'm going to rely on my professor friends who have done the research to prove the lies and more lies from the CIA. But one thing about Allen Dulles, he was a genius. He was a great chess player, his brother too. And he set the system up. He was so marvelous, he put Mac Bundy in the White House, and Mac Bundy was a Dulles protege who ended up as JFK's national security advisor. And he single-handedly, history will know, sabotaged. And he was one of the architects. And so,
Next speaker is Dr. Jim Corsi. Dr. Corsi is a member of, received his PhD from the Harvard University Department of Government. He's published over 30 books on economics, history, politics, and 6 of those have become New York Times bestsellers. He co-authored the final analysis, and if you're in the room here, there's some out on the table out there, presenting indisputable forensic evidence that 2 shots were fired from the front and 1 shot fired from the rear that killed the president in Dealey Plaza crossfire. This was exposed to a 60-year cover-up by the CIA, the FBI, the Pentagon, and the Secret Service. So without further ado, Dr. Corsi, we look forward to hearing from you.
Now, I'm going to do this is in a sense the keynote speech, and I'm going to do a presentation here, a slide presentation, showing you more of the range of lies that we've been told over many, many years. And I think you're going to find this to be very interesting because the government has consistently lied with the backup of the mainstream media to give us false narratives hiding the government's complicity in really evil activities that have changed the course of history. And this is nothing new. It goes back in history, probably to ancient times, but it's time that it be exposed and stopped, and that's really what we're resolved to do here in this conference. And let me move over to the side here and start showing you the slides we prepared. It doesn't seem to be playing. Can you? Okay. What the video shows is, again, saying that, you know, the only, they say a very small percentage of the population.
While riding in a motorcade through Dealey Plaza. Now, in the decades since, historians have written books and about that day. There have also been movies created, songs written. Even the spot where the shooting happened remains a popular tourist destination to this day. Historians we spoke with say that enduring doubt surrounding the official version of events is part of why it continues to have such a hold on Americans.
We're stuck with, you know, the government offering people an implausible explanation. JFK endures as a symbol of people's lack of faith in government. So that's why it's so important.
The National Archives finished its review of classified files related to the JFK assassination earlier this year and says 99% of the records have been made publicly available. But the fact that even some documents remain withheld or redacted fuels skepticism. Polls, in fact, show as many as 60% of Americans still do not believe that the late suspect, Lee Harvey Oswald, acted alone.
All right, now that concludes almost as an assumption that we should believe that Lee Harvey Oswald was the assassin. And I think what we've seen is the research that's been produced makes it clear that Lee Harvey Oswald was not the lone gun assassin. I doubt he fired a single shot that day. But the documents that remain hidden have got to be explosive in one way or another. And Donald Trump was even dissuaded by Mike Pompeo, who was at that time running the CIA, from releasing the final documents. Now, Donald Trump has again signed as president an order demanding the release of these documents, and we're waiting to see if the bureaucracy continues to try to hide some things. But I think the remaining documents are going to make it clear that Lee Harvey Oswald was working with the FBI and the CIA at the time of the assassination, and that Lyndon Johnson was very involved in planning and approving of this. And we saw it, I'm going to skip a little bit of this because we saw it again with the Martin Luther King assassination, and we still have not held the truth. Congress did not even hold hearings on, they held hearings on the Martin Luther King assassination. I have a set of the volumes, and there's more unanswered questions than answered questions. That's what the hearings demonstrate. There were not hearings on Robert Kennedy's assassination. In fact, much of the evidence has been destroyed in Los Angeles. But it's clear all three of these assassinations were not what we were told they were to be. I'm going to skip over this, but there are various broadcasts at the time that show, again, all of the missing pieces, the questions that are unanswered, that have been raised, the pieces that don't fit together. Now, this is 9/11, and you can see that's Building 7, the World Trade Center. It was not hit by an airplane, but yet it came down. And in fact, there's video. We'll see if we can get it to show here. There's video at the time. Let's see if we can get the next slide to come up. There's video of the BBC was broadcasting that the Building 7 had fallen before it came down.
The latest building collapse in New York, you might have heard a few moments ago, was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing. And indeed it has. I'll probably find out more now about that from our correspondent, Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse? Presumably there were very few people in the Salomon building when it collapsed. I mean, there were, I suppose, fears of possible further collapses around the area.
That's what you would hope, because this whole downtown area behind me has been completely sealed off and evacuated, apart from the emergency workers. That was done by the mayor, Rudy Giuliani, much earlier.
Take U.S. authorities 7 years to announce it fell due to normal office fires, in a report now proven to be riddled with lies and fraud. We all believed in a fairy tale once.
It's impossible that a building that had not yet fallen was reported to have been fallen before it fell, unless there was intelligence that was known at the time. And again, the lies go on. So we see in the 2020 election that the counting, Donald Trump was leading throughout the evening, and then in 7 states, the counting stopped. So Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Arizona, the states stopped counting. And when they started, all these mail-in ballots were produced and run through the machines. And